It was the summer of 1971 in Changsha, the capital of China's Hunan province. A team of workers was digging a simple air raid shelter, a precaution born from political tensions of the time. Their shovel struck something unexpected, solid, ancient, and strangely resistant. At first, no one realized the gravity of what lay beneath the soil. But as excavation crews were called in, the truth emerged. They had stumbled upon a massive tomb complex, untouched for over 2 millennia. Deep inside, sealed beneath layers of charcoal and clay, lay the body of a woman who had been dead for over 2,200 years. Yet when researchers finally opened her lacquered coffin, what they found defied not only expectation, but the very laws of nature. The body was not a skeleton. It was not even a shriveled, desiccated husk of mummy like those unearthed in Egypt. No, this was something entirely different. Her skin was still soft to the touch. Her limbs were flexible, her hair still intact, her eyelashes still delicate upon her face. Most shocking of all, when medical examiners later probed her veins, they discovered something that should not have been there after 2,000 years. In that moment, China and the world was confronted with one of the most astonishing archaeological finds in history. The woman was Xin Zhui, better known as Lady Dai, the wife of the Marquis of Dai during the Han Dynasty. She had died around 163 BC. Yet here she was, resting in uncanny stillness, as if death had only just brushed past her. Scientists, historians, and doctors alike were stunned. How could a woman who lived and died before the birth of Christ remain preserved with such eerie perfection? What secrets had been buried with her? And what did this discovery reveal not only about her life, but also about her death? Lady Dai's tomb was not merely a grave. It was a time capsule, one that carried within it the intimate details of a woman's final days, her health, her luxuries, her illnesses, and ultimately, the cause of her tragic end. And as the coffin was unsealed, China stood at the threshold of mystery that still baffles experts to this day. Before she became one of the most famous mummies in history, Xin Zhui was a woman of privilege, status, and refinement. She lived during the Western Han Dynasty, a period of immense cultural and political power in ancient China. Born into aristocracy, she married Li Cong, the Marquis of Dai, who served as the Chancellor of Changsha. Together, they lived in a sprawling estate, surrounded by servants, silk garments, fine foods, and luxuries reserved only for the elite. Lady Dai's life, at least on the surface, appeared to be one of comfort and abundance. Records and artifacts from her tomb reveal that she enjoyed music, played a form of ancient Chinese board game, and dressed in the finest silk robes. Her tomb contained delicately embroidered clothing, cosmetics, and a treasure trove of items designed to ease her into the afterlife. But beneath this outward splendor was a woman plagued by the consequences of indulgence. Modern medical analysis of her body revealed astonishing details. She suffered from clogged arteries, gallstones, and even liver disease. Her joints showed signs of strain, and her body carried the weight of a life filled with rich foods and little physical activity. Lady Dai, it seemed, lived much as her status allowed, lavishly but at a cost. Inside her stomach, scientists found the remnants of her last meal, melon seeds, suggesting she had eaten fresh melons shortly before her death. In a haunting way, this tiny detail brings her final moments vividly to life. We do not just know how she died. We know what she tasted, savored, and swallowed in her final hours. It is believed that Lady Dai died sometime around 163 BC, at the age of about 50 years old. Historical and medical evidence suggests a likely cause, a sudden heart attack, triggered by her declining health. For a noble woman, it was an unremarkable end, yet in death, her story became extraordinary. Because while thousands of others from her time faded into dust and bone, Lady Dai remained whole, intact, preserved in a way that has never been fully replicated. The life she lived, filled with privilege, ultimately set the stage for the great mystery of her death. The luxuries that weakened her body also led to the elaborate burial rituals that would preserve her far beyond the grasp of time. But to understand the full magnitude of this preservation, we must look at what happened next. The forensic autopsy that revealed her body's secrets and astonished scientists across the globe. When researchers first opened Lady Dai's coffin in 1972, they expected to find a skeleton. What they uncovered instead was a body so intact, so lifelike, that it demanded a full medical autopsy. Doctors and forensic scientists, some of China's finest, assembled for what would become one of the most extraordinary post-mortem examinations in history. They treated Lady Dai not as an ancient artifact, but as a modern patient. As scalpels sliced through her skin, the astonishment deepened. Her veins still contained traces of blood. Her organs, though shrunken, were intact enough to be studied. Even her stomach contents could be examined in remarkable detail. What they found painted the picture of a woman suffering under the weight of her own lifestyle. Her arteries were clogged with cholesterol deposits, evidence of advanced atherosclerosis. Her gallbladder was filled with stones, some as large as marbles. Her liver showed signs of chronic disease, likely caused by years of rich food and alcohol. Her joints bore the stress of obesity, as she was considered overweight by both modern and ancient standards. The conclusion was clear. Lady Dai had likely died a massive heart attack, brought on by poor health. But there was another chilling detail. Inside her stomach, scientists discovered the remains of melon seeds. They had not yet fully digested, suggesting she had eaten fruit, sweet, cooling, refreshing, just 1 or 2 hours before she collapsed and died. This single detail is one of the most haunting aspects of Lady Dai's story. It makes her death feel immediate, tangible, and heartbreakingly human. Over 2,200 years later, we can still imagine her final meal, the moment she put the melon to her lips, unaware it would be her last. Her body, however, remained a riddle. How could such perfect preservation have been possible? Her organs were not mummified, her body not embalmed in the way we know from Egypt. Instead, she remained soft, supple, flexible, as if she had been asleep for only days. And so, the scientists turned their attention to her tomb itself. Somewhere within its sealed chambers lay the key to this impossible preservation. The mystery of Lady Dai's preservation did not lie solely in her body. It lay in the tomb that entombed her. Her resting place was not a simple grave. It was a carefully engineered chamber, sealed with extraordinary precision. Excavators uncovered a structure layered with white clay and charcoal, designed to lock out air, water, and bacteria. The deeper they dug, the more they realized this was no ordinary burial. It was a masterpiece of ancient mortuary science. Inside, Lady Dai was placed within 4 nested coffins, each lacquered in rich black and red, each layer adding another barrier against the forces of decay. When the innermost coffin was finally opened, scientists found her body, immersed in a mysterious fluid, a reddish liquid that has never been fully identified. To this day, researchers are divided about its nature. Was it a sophisticated preservative, a byproduct of the sealed environment, or simply groundwater that had seeped in and chemically reacted with the coffin's materials? Whatever its origin, it played a part in the miracle of preservation. Equally vital was the sheer wealth of burial goods surrounding her. Over 1,400 artifacts were placed in the tomb: silk garments, lacquerware, makeup, combs, food containers, and even musical instruments. This collection revealed not only the lifestyle she had once enjoyed, but also the spiritual and cultural practices of the Han Dynasty, where preparing for the afterlife was as important as life itself. Her tomb was, in every sense, a sealed world, a carefully balanced microenvironment that, for over 2,000 years, kept time itself at bay. Yet, despite decades of study, no modern lab has ever been able to replicate the conditions that preserved Lady Dai. Other ancient bodies, buried in similar ways, have decomposed beyond recognition. She remains, to this day, an exception among exceptions. Forensic scientists have called her the most perfectly preserved body in history. And yet, with every discovery came new questions. Was this preservation intentional, a deliberate act of ancient chemistry, or was it a miracle of chance, the perfect accident of soil, climate, and design? Lady Dai's body was both a scientific marvel and a haunting mystery. But beyond the preservation itself lay a deeper story, one about her society, her culture, and the intimate details of daily life in the Han Dynasty. Lady Dai's tomb was not just a grave. It was a time capsule, a frozen glimpse into the daily life, wealth, and beliefs of the Han Dynasty, one of the most powerful empires in ancient China. When archaeologists cataloged her burial goods, they uncovered over 1,400 artifacts, each telling its own story. There were silk robes, embroidered with patterns so delicate they seemed alive under the dim light of the tomb. There were boxes of cosmetics, combs, and mirrors, suggesting a woman who took pride in her appearance. Musical instruments, lacquered trays, and games were placed beside her, proof that leisure and refinement were as important in the afterlife as in life. But perhaps most haunting were the food offerings. Dozens of lacquer containers preserved the meals Lady Dai was meant to enjoy beyond death. Meats, grains, and even melon seeds, echoing the last food she ate in life. These offerings spoke to a culture that believed in continuity after death, where the soul would require the same comforts it had known while living. The tomb also reflected the political power of her family. Lady Dai's husband, Li Zong, was a high-ranking official under the Han Emperor. Their wealth and influence were evident in the sheer extravagance of the burial. Only a woman of immense privilege could have been laid to rest in such splendor. The Han Dynasty, during which Lady Dai lived, was a time of innovation, expansion, and artistry. It was an era that gave the world lasting contributions in medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. But it was also an age of hierarchy, where the lives of the elite and the common people were worlds apart. Lady Dai's preserved body, her luxuries, and her illnesses together tell a complex story of a woman whose privilege gave her comfort, but whose indulgence led to ill health. And yet, in death, that same privilege ensured she was buried in such a way that her body would endure for over 2,000 years. Through her, we do not just learn about one woman. We glimpse the very fabric of Han society. We see its priorities, its spiritual beliefs, its excesses, and its fragility. But beyond the cultural treasures and historical insight lay something darker. For all her wealth and privilege, Lady Dai could not escape mortality, and her body, preserved in uncanny detail, became both a miracle of science and a haunting reminder of death's inevitability. What came next was a revelation so unsettling it blurred the line between beauty and horror. The sight of Lady Dai herself, not as an artifact, but as a woman who still looked alive. When the sealed tomb layers were finally lifted, archaeologists braced themselves. They expected bones, fragments, perhaps a faint outline of clothing. What they saw instead left them stunned. Before them lay Xin Zhui, Lady Dai, a woman who appeared as though she had died only yesterday. Her skin was still soft, pale, and elastic. When gently pressed, it yielded, as if blood still flowed beneath. Her veins were visible, faintly bluish beneath the surface. Her eyelashes, over 2,000 years old, remained intact. Even the delicate hair inside her nostrils had not decayed. Doctors and pathologists who examined her were shaken. In an autopsy performed after her discovery, they found her organs so intact they could identify the last meal she ate, a serving of melon, still lodged in her stomach. They discovered blocked arteries, gallstones, high cholesterol, the unmistakable signs of obesity and poor health. It was as if they were conducting a routine autopsy on a modern patient, not an ancient noblewoman. The shock deepened when they attempted to draw fluid from her veins. There was still blood, dark and thin. It revealed that Lady Dai's blood type had been type A. In death, she had given up a secret that even she herself could never have known in life. The autopsy revealed another chilling detail. Her cause of death. Doctors concluded she died of a heart attack, brought on by high blood pressure, clogged arteries, and excessive weight. In other words, despite her status and luxuries, she suffered the same fate as millions today. But what disturbed experts most was not her illnesses. It was the uncanny preservation of her humanity. She was not a skeleton, not a withered husk, but a woman who could still be mistaken for being asleep. Journalists who saw her called the discovery a miracle and a nightmare. Scientists praised the preservation as unparalleled. Yet some confessed to feeling uneasy, as though they were intruding upon a body that seemed unwilling to surrender to time. How had her body survived when thousands of others turned to dust? The answer lay in the tomb itself. She had been buried in nested coffins, within an airtight chamber lined with layers of charcoal and white clay. Her body was submerged in an unknown fluid, still not fully explained to this day. This mysterious liquid, combined with the airtight environment, created conditions so perfect that decay was halted almost entirely. To see Lady Dai was to stand at the edge of science and horror. She was proof that death could be resisted, but not defeated. Her body survived, but her soul, Whatever one believes of it was long gone. What remained was something in between, a haunting echo of life, preserved in flesh. For archaeologists, Lady Dai was a treasure. For scientists, a case study. For ordinary people, she became something else entirely, a ghost in the flesh. And yet, the story of Lady Dai did not end with her body. Around her lay manuscripts, maps, and artifacts that would forever change our understanding of ancient China. But for anyone who gazed upon her, the central question was not about culture or science. It was about mortality itself. How could a woman dead for 2 millennia still look more alive than the dust around her? The moment Lady Dai's body was revealed, the world of science erupted with questions. How could a woman, buried more than 2,000 years ago, remain preserved in such astonishing detail? Doctors, forensic pathologists, and archaeologists lined up for answers. Autopsies, chemical tests, and countless theories followed. Yet, even today, the preservation of Xin is not fully understood. At first glance, the explanation seemed simple. She had been buried with extraordinary care. Archaeologists discovered she lay in 4 nested coffins, one inside the other, creating a near-airtight seal. Around these coffins, workers in the Han Dynasty had packed layers of charcoal and white clay, a combination that regulated temperature and repelled water. The tomb, deep beneath the earth, remained untouched by seasonal shifts or natural flooding. Inside her innermost coffin, her body floated in a mysterious liquid. Described as brown, slightly acidic, and sticky, it contained traces of magnesium, salts, and unknown compounds. Some suggested it was a preservative fluid, purposefully created by ancient embalmers. Others argued it was simply groundwater seepage mixed with the coffin's organic materials over time. To this day, no one can replicate its exact formula, but the preservation went beyond the liquid. Lady Dai's internal organs were intact. Her arteries were still elastic. Even her joints bent slightly when manipulated. Scientists proposed that the near-constant temperature of her tomb, hovering around 54 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 degrees Celsius, created a refrigeration effect without freezing. Still, these factors alone could not account for the level of preservation. Experts admitted, "We have never seen anything like this." Comparisons were drawn to Egypt's mummies. Their bodies were intentionally dried and embalmed, preserved in linen and resin. In contrast, Lady Dai had not been embalmed at all. Her preservation seemed accidental, or perhaps the result of knowledge we no longer understand. Her body challenged modern science in other ways. Tests revealed that her tissues remained supple because proteins in her cells had not broken down as expected. This raised a haunting possibility that ancient Chinese mortuary practices held secrets now lost to history. The Chinese media called her the undying woman. Foreign journalists described her as the most perfectly preserved mummy in the world. Forensic scientists compared her condition to cadavers preserved in modern laboratories. Yet Lady Dai's preservation was achieved centuries before refrigeration, formaldehyde, or vacuum sealing were even conceived. The scientific mystery drew worldwide attention. Researchers from Europe and America traveled to Hunan province to study her. Some declare that Lady Dai's preservation was a result of a perfect storm of conditions: airtight coffins, chemical balance, stable climate, and burial depth. Others hinted at something stranger, that ancient mortuary specialists may have intentionally engineered the preservation, using formulas we cannot decode today. But amid the science, there was something unsettling. Journalists who saw Lady Dai described conflicting emotions. Some called her miraculous, others grotesque. One archaeologist admitted privately, it felt like she might open her eyes. The preservation blurred the line between life and death. Scientists studied her as data, but the public saw her as a haunting figure, a woman who refused to decay, who stared back at time itself. For all the answers, mysteries remained. What was the liquid? Why had no other Han Dynasty tomb produced a body like hers? Was Lady Dai's case a singular accident, or proof of an ancient science we have yet to rediscover? Lady Dai was more than a mummy. She was a riddle carved into human flesh, and that riddle remains unsolved. The discovery of Lady Dai did more than astonish archaeologists. It transformed our understanding of ancient China and left a legacy that still resonates today. For scientists, She became a bridge between past and present. Her body allowed researchers to study the health of an elite woman from the Han Dynasty as if she were a modern patient. Her heart, arteries, liver, and stomach were examined with methods used in hospitals. The findings reveal what she ate, how she lived, and ultimately, how she died. Medical experts confirmed that Lady Dai suffered from high blood pressure, clogged arteries, and gallstones. Her stomach still contained melon seeds, proving her last meal was fruit eaten just hours before death. Cause of death? A massive heart attack at just 50 years old. In this, she was not so different from many today. Despite being a noble woman, despite access to finest foods and comforts, she was undone by the same silent killers, obesity, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, that plague modern society. In her death, Lady Dai reminded us that human fragility crosses time, class, and culture. For historians, her tomb painted an intimate portrait of Han Dynasty life. More than 1,000 artifacts were unearthed. Lacquerware, silk garments, makeup tools, cosmetics, food, and even musical instruments. They showed a world of elegance, ritual, and luxury. Through Lady Dai, we glimpsed the daily routines, diets, and beliefs of China's ruling class. And for China itself, her discovery was a national treasure. Lady Dai became a cultural icon, displayed in the Hunan Provincial Museum. Visitors travel from around the world, lining up to see the woman who defied decay. Some marveled at her scientific importance. Others whispered prayers or left offerings, treating her not as a specimen, but as a spirit. Yet, her preservation also provoked ethical questions. Was it right to display her body, still so lifelike, to the public? Should she have been reburied, honored as the noble woman she once was? Museums argued that her case advanced history and medicine, but for many, the sight of her delicate hands and closed eyes felt like an intrusion into eternity. Outside of China, Lady Dai changed how scientists thought about preservation. She was cited in forensic journals, medical research, and even NASA experiments on biological decay. Her body proved that nature, and perhaps ancient human ingenuity, could achieve what modern embalming rarely could. But perhaps Lady Dai's greatest legacy was more human than scientific. She reminded us of the fleeting line between life and death, between time that destroys and time that preserves. For over 2 millennia, she lay silent in the earth, untouched by the world. And then in 1971, she returned not alive, but not gone either. Visitors who saw her often described a shiver, a sense of unease. One journalist wrote, "I looked at her face and felt as though I were intruding on someone's sleep." Another compared her to Sleeping Beauty, preserved not by magic, but by mystery. Lady Dai had become more than an archaeological marvel. She was a mirror, a reminder that no matter how advanced we become, time remains a great equalizer. And yet, in rare cases, time chooses to pause, leaving behind something that unsettles, fascinates, and humbles us. Her discovery stands as one of the most extraordinary archaeological finds of the 20th century, not just because of the preservation, not just because of the unanswered questions, but because Lady Dai forces us to confront the oldest question of all. What does it mean to truly die?